welcome to my podcast on real relationships. My name is Sophie Passon and I am a relationship expert, international speaker and best-selling author of a book, Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching TV, on the news, social media, the perception given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, and listen to what real people think, do, and go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that doesn't exist. I may not agree with everything that is said by my guests, but it is their chance to express their opinions and their stories. And today, talking about relationships, we have a fellow author and dating coach, Mark Bradford. Bradford even. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
How are you?
I am just lovely. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
I'm going to say good morning and good evening because of the time.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Mm-hmm. You're like a few hours behind, aren't you?
Yes, I am about 6.
Yes, that's it. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Personally?
Yeah, as a dating coach, as who you are, what you want to share with us.
So I'm someone who has written a couple books on the subject of relationships and connecting to people. I've also built a coaching site from scratch because I have kind of a dual brain thing where I like to be creative, but I also like to be logistical and logical. So I have these web development skills. So that helped me to build sort of a framework for what I was trying to explain to people. I like helping people. I'm a single dad. I'm a semi-empty nester. My daughter moved out and moved back in again to make it easier for college. So that's where I am right now. And I'm also dating myself. Not literally, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, yes.
Okay, yes.
So, you are a dating coach, as I am. You might be surprised to know that in Europe, a lot of people don't really know it even exists, let alone what it does. So would you like to explain a little bit more about what you do and how you can help people?
Well, sure. And actually, you might be able to help me because I consider you to be more of a step up from even what I do. And so I had to actually be told I was a dating coach. I didn't understand what that was. And at first, when I heard the term, I was almost not offended, but I thought, no, that's not a real thing, because I thought you can't tell people how to behave. You can't say, well, say this thing and be disingenuous here and do this thing I'm telling you while I pull the strings behind the curtain, and then everything is going to work out. So that's what I thought dating coaches did, but they don't.
And if I may, some people do, and I don't like them because I think it's so fake and horrible and stupid and silly.
Well, and that same string of expletives you just said would also apply to people who do coaching. And I had the same thing about coaching. I thought, the whole life coaching thing. So when I moved into that, I thought, okay, you can't be a life coach. You don't know that much. You're not Yoda. You're not Gandhi. How do you know that much to tell someone about life? That's too big. But then I realized a coach is like a spotter at a gym. They may not be stronger, they may not know more, but they're in a position that their perspective allows them to see what you're doing and kind of help you to do what you want to do, not what they want to do. So that's what made me feel much more comfortable about the whole concept that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, same here to a degree. I mean, there are some people who like to teach women how to flip the hair and blokes to, of wingmen and stuff and what to say when, and if she says this, you say that. No, it's not what it's about at all. At all. It's understanding why you're really single and what to do so that you're not going to carry on being single.
Right. And what I did was in my first book, The Status Game 1, that was mostly about online dating and all the pitfalls of it and pictures and how you make people play Where's Waldo in your picture, where every single picture is 40 people and you don't say which one you are, and you have pictures of your dog and you sound really angry and things that you could just adjust, that it wasn't really about the person themselves but their approach to it
and how they're coming across.
Exactly. So I thought, well, yeah, I've always done that. That's really the core of what I'm trying to explain to people. I thought, well, if you call that dating coaching, okay.
It's just a term, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. Just like the whole life coach thing. I don't want to coach your life. I'm strategically trying to help you deal with your time, energy, and resources. Right.
Yeah. And what actually got you into it?
I got a divorce a while back, which was very interesting. It's sort of a 3 martini and popcorn kind of story, and, or wine, either or. And it's so I sort of was juggling my kids full time at the same time juggling my business at the time, which was technology consulting and things like that. So I was doing all that at once, and I finally decided, I'd go for walks with the kids all the time and just let them express themselves so they were validated. And I finally went to a psychologist to take them to make sure that I wasn't screwing them up any further, kind of like doing the Ben Kenobi, Darth Vader thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she asked me what I was doing, and I told her all the things I was doing for the kids, and she said, that's great. But then she said, what are you doing for you?
Mm.
And I just kind of stared at her, and I'm not doing anything. And she said, you really need to be doing something for you, so there's something left. So that actually made it into one of my talks, which is all about how you put your mask on first, just like when you're in the plane and there's an issue. And it seems counterintuitive to take care of yourself first, but you really do, so that there's something left for your kids or your loved ones and so forth. So in doing that, I went on all the dating sites. And of course, being logical, I went, okay, here's what's wrong with all them. So I actually created a dating site from scratch called Only a Glance, because it's based on the fact that it takes 7 seconds to realize whether you like someone or not. And then we go from that initial spark and do some other fun, complicated stuff. So I went ahead and did that. I created the coaching site, started to move into that, and so forth. And then all of a sudden the books came out of nowhere.
Fair enough. So we all have our own favorite tools, and for me, that's neuro-linguistic programming. What would you say yours is?
My favorite tools are analogies. I really would say analogy. I use that extensively in the books, and I love the tools that I've built for myself, for my clients, so they can actually visually see what it is I'm talking about.
And what would you say are the benefits of using a dating coach? That is not one of them that teaches you how to fix your hair.
Yeah. Which is really funny, which is like, again, I still feel the resistance when you say that sentence. Well, no, don't use a dating coach. That's not right. But if you use it under the terms of what you and I clearly do and what our concept, I think it's tremendous, because once you really get what a coach is supposed to be, a true coach, you want 4 of them. I mean, you want a nutrition coach, you want a workout coach, you want a strategic life planning coach, and then the most important thing in your life, the thing that's going to either make you happy or go through living hell for the rest of your life, the other person. Yeah, I would think a coach would be really important for that. And so I would say that I'd say it's fantastic if you can find the right person
for you.
Right, for you. Well, and under the definition of what you just said. Like you said, there are a lot of people out there who do say, well, if Bill says this, say this, and trick him this way and do that and say that. Yeah, stay away from that. Go more towards what you are doing.
And I think that for me, a lot of the time, people who will go and learn how to fix their hair, whatever, they're not actually addressing the real problem. And they might, yes, indeed, pull someone, but it won't be the right person for them, and it probably will not last. And I think that that's what people need to understand. It's not about the ego and pulling somebody. It's about addressing what is actually holding you back and what is stopping you from meeting that right person for you. And if you were to meet them, would you actually recognize them?
Right. Yeah, that's a very, very true statement. That's a very philosophical and true statement, because you may have built up all these walls, you may have built up all these perceptions about things so that you do run into the person, but you're kind of a jerk to them when you see them because you're so crabby, and you're crabby because you're not meeting someone, or you're not open to something a little bit more broader and more dimensional than saying, well, I want someone who's 9 feet tall. Yeah. Well, that's kind of limiting, and that's one of the things I say in the status game. I talk about status and how we have these elements that we focus on, our little gauges, and someone's gauge might be height. That might be their biggest driving factor, but it's really not height, it's security. Yeah. So they like tall guys because now it makes them feel like when they were 11 and they're hugging their dad, but they keep going out with these jerks because they're all tall jerks, but they were tall, so that was good enough.
Yeah. And talking of that and the book, could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, sure. And here's a lovely visual. Ta-da.
If you can't see it, which is most of you.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't realize. Okay. I was holding up the book. It's a lovely book for those of you who didn't see it. It's fantastic.
Describe it.
I've ever seen. So it's called The Status Game. I actually wrote The Status Game and The Status Game too. The book is all about how we connect in relationships, whether they're with our kids, with our spouse, with our boss, with our vendors, with our friends, and with our wife, all those connections are built on the same thing, and you're going to think it's crazy when you hear it, but it's true. It's all based on status, and there's three kinds of status. There's the status of what you normally think of, which is stature. Like, oh my God, look at that famous person. Wow, I have to go and stop and stare at them because of their stature. And status as in we all have a dashboard of gauges. So maybe you have a height gauge, maybe you have a wealth gauge, maybe you have a good dad gauge, maybe you have a humor gauge. If all those gauges are high enough, suddenly they appear on your radar. And that's what the status game is all about, and how it gets manipulated, how it manipulates us in our own relationships and things. It's why we stay in relationships we shouldn't be in. It's why we stay at jobs that totally suck, but we stay there. Well, I want to be associated with XYZ company. That's pretty cool working there. But I thought they treat you like crap and they don't pay you. Well, yeah, it's status. All this status stuff happens, and that's what the book actually talks all about.
Yeah, and I think you just touched on something which I mentioned in another podcast, but I was on a forum of some description last week or something, and there was a question which was, out of these four qualities, which were money, looks, intelligence, and sense of humour, if you could only pick two, if you were going to pick someone, what would there be and kind of why? Mm-hmm. And I really looked long and hard at it, and I was like, I can't pick any, because for me, they're not important. For me, what really matters and what should matter and would make a relationship last is connection and conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think that out of that connection conversation also comes chemistry. And I think that sometimes a lot of people can be so wrapped up in looks, money, intelligence and sense of humour. All these things can change and go. Where if you've got that connection and the conversation, that's unlikely to go.
That's absolutely correct. And I think when they ask you questions like that, they're sort of mixing up the frosting and the cake. There's an element there that doesn't belong. It's the looks one. Because when a lot of women say, oh, I want a guy who's funny.
Define funny.
Well, no, you left out two words, sweetheart. You want someone who's funny and attractive. You want someone who's happy and attractive. You always have to have the element, and I'm not saying we're shallow, but we are visual creatures. After millions of years of evolution, you can scan a Starbucks and go, yeah, there's no one in here I'm interested in. Think about the physics of being able to do that with your brain. How did you know that?
It's animal, isn't it? And it's also for friends, for everyone.
Yeah. Right. And it's very specific to each person for real reasons. I mean, there's a few books out there that talk about the chemistry of how when you're in your mom's womb, if she experienced certain things, there was more testosterone, more this, more that, which means you like people with eyes that are farther apart, closer together, da-da-da. But all that stuff is separate than those other things. So you may say, once I'm attracted to somebody, I like smart guys. Once I'm attracted to someone, well, in your case, you're a bright woman, so you're probably a sapiosexual, which means you like people who are smart. It's sort of a turn on because that's a huge dimension. I mean, you can go, Tunga like, me like woman, but you can also add to that me like woman who have fun, sparkling conversation that also entices me and kind of gets me going and maybe puts me a little on a defensive where I have to prove myself a little bit, which is kind of exciting. So those are other elements that work in there. And you said that they change, and you're absolutely right, because on the dashboard of life, the way that I see it physically is that someone may be attracted to a guy because he has really long hair and he's a soul of a poet and he sits there in his underwear playing his guitar and stick it to the man and all that. But now all of a sudden it's 15 years later and they have kids and the kids have to eat, and dude, we need a house, dude, pay the rent. Suddenly that gauge shrunk. The heart of the soul of a poet gauge is small, but the wealth and take care of my kids is huge.
I do apologize if you can hear the cat.
No, I cannot. I see your face every so often, and I think I'm saying the wrong word or something. I can't.
I'm being harassed by the feline of the house. So what made you write the book?
I think wow. Well, I might have a different answer for each book. So the first book was a culmination of a number of articles I had written for Only a Glance. It just kept coming out, like these things that were so obvious that people weren't doing. I would literally see hundreds and hundreds of profiles doing the same thing. And there were people I weren't even attracted to, but I wanted to write to them and say, look, you really need to change those pictures because you're giving people the wrong impression. Like, you seem like a nice person, but then you jam the camera down your shirt. Okay. You're going to turn some people off. So I started to sort of accumulate those articles and put them in the first book. Then I was done. Then I wanted to move on to my time, energy, and resources book, which actually had been written already. But then all of a sudden I was writing some little snippets, and I thought, I have a rule. There's a difference between writing and publishing. Writing is you write whatever you want. Publishing is stop screwing around and focus on A. Because I was like writing 2 or 3 things. I have a couple of fictions I've written. So, and I sound kind of all over the place just in this conversation, I'm sure. So I apologize. But what I would do then is I started writing sentences, and the sentences turned into paragraphs. The paragraphs turned into chapters. I thought, fine, I'm going to write the second book. And it just came out of nowhere. And like in the matter of a tiny amount of time, it came out. Both books came out this year. Mm-hmm. So the second book is really about, once I discovered status, it was like being an alchemist, which I'm excited. You can see there's a flask behind me, and my coaching is called Alchemy for Life. So I'm kind of excited about that. But when it came to the book, I saw this principle, and everything built off of it. Everything built off of status, validation, status between friends, something I call link juice, which is Google uses that for searching, but we also use it for connecting with other people. Mm-hmm. If I think you're pretty darn awesome and you introduce me to somebody, well, I suddenly think they're pretty darn awesome. So they link through you, all that stuff. It just kept going. I'm like, where's this coming from? And then it finally is done. And the size of that book is almost twice of the other one.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Mm-hmm. And what would you say at the moment is actually the number one problem for single people?
Probably FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's what I would think, because they have so much fear about being taken advantage of and being catfished, and the uncertainty of what's out there, and the doubt of themselves of going, I don't know if I can do this. And oh my God, this is so difficult. Because it's really taxing. I mean, it's like you go on all these dates, and it's like going on interviews for possibly the most important job in your life. And I say that this could be very well the person you have children with and go on and spend the rest of your life with. Gee, that's not a lot of pressure, is it?
Yeah, but why don't you think that sometimes people put too much pressure on themselves and just because of that, they then kind of like, like magnet attracts and I can't remember, repulse. Mm-hmm. Do you think that sometimes because you kind of like put that much pressure and effort and all the rest of it,
it flips
you kind of become a little bit like unattractive in that way because you're just coming out of every pore of your body?
Yes, and I actually talk about that as it applies to status, because you lower your status to the point where you're suddenly not as interesting as you were before. In fact, I quoted Groucho Marx. There's a famous thing that happened with Groucho Marx where he wrote a letter to a really elite club, and he said, "Dear sirs, I don't want to be part of the club anymore because I don't want to be part of a club that would have me." Mm-hmm. Because clearly your standards aren't high enough. So people do that. They write a letter. They're like, "Yeah, you must not be as fantastic as I thought because you're easily way too eager about me." So that's a status item as well. And I think you're right about the pressure. Like, it's just a cup of coffee, just so what? We'll run screaming away. Nobody's going to murder you with an axe. Just meet out in public. I see that a lot. And I think the current culture makes it really difficult for males to just go out and just be normal men. Just be men. And, because you can't be strong and chivalrous and all the other things without bumping up against some of the things that are out there right now. And it's kind of a catch-22. At least that's what I encounter, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm pondering as you're saying this. I think that for me, you say, you kind of go all these things to be, but I think sometimes maybe, the right person would, I'm not going to say not care. It's not what I mean.
Oh, no. I totally get where you're going. Yeah. When you meet the right person, none of this stuff suddenly matters. All those rules. And that's why the other coaches and the other people, none of their stuff applies. The stuff that we talk about applies because it's from your core, but their stuff doesn't apply because none of these tricks and this nonsense works with the right person. Because the right person goes, yeah, I don't care. You want to meet tonight? Okay. Well, what about that rule of waiting 2 days? What about this? I don't care. You want to meet? I like you. Here's my number. It's just the way it works. And you get that spark, that first spark with somebody. None of that stuff matters. And that's when you've met the right person and you think, oh my God, this was nonsense and torture. But then you get back on the dating scene and you're like, well, what do I have to do again?
But I think sometimes as well, I think because of online dating, people kind of put all their eggs in one basket. It's like dating has just become online, or set events like speed dating or whatever, But I think people are really not open to opportunities in the real world. And the truth is that actually you're going to meet an awful lot of people in shopping and, don't know, doing whatever. And actually these people might be just as suited to you, but then, you know, probably even better suited to you than anyone you would meet on a dating site.
Oh, absolutely. And statistically speaking, statistics show that if you meet somebody at work and you have a relationship with them, it's more likely to last than if you don't meet them at work. It's just a binary thing of that, and not a big deal. But the current environment, which I've run into, is that you can't ask somebody out at work. You can't ask them out.
It's more difficult, isn't it, really?
And the same thing happened with me with sort of the yoga class I'm part of. There is somebody in there that I thought was kind of attractive, and I wanted to ask her, and I thought, no, I guess I'll wait 6 months, because then she won't go, aha, a man joined a yoga class to ask a woman out. We can't be safe anywhere, stranger, you know. So you do run into that stuff. But I wish we were a bit more open about that stuff, where we could say, look, you know, no one's going to hurt anyone, and I know there are people who do, but I'm saying it would be nice to have a bit more freedom to just connect with people as intelligent, advanced humans.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could all gather in a building somewhere and do that. I don't know.
I think that you kind of are going to agree with what I'm just about to say, just because of everything we just said. But I do find that a lot of single people's expectations kind of need to be adjusted just a tad. Because as you say, they've got this massive checklist of must have this, must have that, must be this high, this short, this fat, this whatever. And actually, most people, when they meet somebody, always say, actually, it's not quite my type.
Right, exactly. And yeah, and I have a chapter on why that doesn't feel right. If someone says, oh, I know someone would be great for you, you're like, you never have a positive reaction to that. Because if we say that, if we hear that, we think, oh, they must not be good. You must be, you just start to bristle at that, because who we really like are someone that we think is stellar and fantastic and just buries all those needles and all the important things. And we think to ourselves, our friends couldn't know that. So if they say there's somebody who would be just right for you, you think, ew, I don't know. No, thank you. So you're right. When we meet people, I think people tend to make those bullet lists to fill the vacuum of, oh, I don't know what attraction is. I don't know yet. You know, because it's such a base spark. And what I found interesting is that women who have recently gotten a divorce had a really good list. Because that came from their experience of, I don't want that anymore. This is what I want, and I've learned a bit. But then that list starts to dry up, and it turns into, here's 400 specific things I want that you probably can't do, you know, or whatever. You know what I mean? So it gets a little bit too specific, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people put too much. I mean, this is a perfect example, actually. I quite like to remain friends with my ex-boyfriends, because if I went out with them, I must have liked them. And I'm friends with most of them, to be fair. Anyway, one of them rang me this particular afternoon, and he was after, obviously, some advice. And I was doing a talk in the evening, and I could either waste my breath and tell him everything I was going to say that evening, where really what I was trying to do was have a cat nap, or, as I said to him, why don't you come with me? It's a networking event for single people, and then you can listen to the talk, because actually you could do with that, and you could do with going out. Anyway, off we trot. And it so happens that he met someone that night. And she isn't what he was looking for. He probably isn't quite what she was looking for, in terms of, like, you know, where they met and how it happened. He wasn't obviously supposed to be there, nor was she. But actually, they're perfect for each other. Mm-hmm. In so many ways. And there was that chemistry straight away. And I think that it goes back to what I just said. Sometimes people, he literally just went for something to do. And so did she. She went because her friend wanted to go. Mm-hmm. And actually, but they were both open to it. And that's the difference.
Right. That openness is huge. And like I said, you could literally see the person who's going to make you happy for the rest of your life, but because you look like you want to kill them because you're having a bad day, you're not going to connect. And it's, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm not a believer in The Secret. I mean, I'm not think a happy thing and things will appear. I think The Secret to me is a window into something that actually is true, but it's just a way to look at it. So,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like what you're describing. It's not like fairies like pop out of the trees and go, here, your wish is granted. It's more of a, well, since you're not being a dick,
Yeah.
you're going to see people around you who kind of connect with you a little bit more.
I think for me, the law of attraction, the way it works for me is if I'm negative, I am going to be surrounded by negative people. If I am not whinging all the time, I've got more chances to have positive things happen to me. At the same time, the thing that we're describing with a secret, I agree with you in the sense of like, just thinking something's going to happen might not. But sometimes people forget that, it's like a wheel. The law of physics says if we go down and go back up, we go back down and go back up until you stop the car, in essence. And that's life. That's just the way things are. Things will go wrong, then they go better, then they go wrong again, then they go better. Right. And you have to go through bad stuff sometimes, just not to get the other side, but to become a better person and actually be in a position where you can have more better things.
Right. Exactly. And you said three really important things. You talked about how the secret or being positive does affect things. And I actually had a podcast called Just Be Positive, Not. And it's all about how your positivity and the other things actually affects your actions. So if you could rewind the clock, you could see, look at all the stuff I did because I was thinking that and was on my mind. I wanted something beautiful, so I went in all these directions I never would have went in. And you also touched on how, I forget now, but we were talking about just being positive and how that does affect you. And I really think it does. I really think it does.
Yeah. And also I find that sometimes single people are kind of looking for someone to complete them and bring them what they're lacking. And I personally believe that a partner should add to your life, not be your life, if that makes sense, and not give you what you can't give yourself. I mean, the saying, if you can't be happy single, you won't be happy taken. Well, it's exactly that, isn't it? Have you found that too?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Now that I heard, yeah, absolutely. I do find that, and you're right, because and one of the things I tell people is, when you get out of a fairly long relationship, you shouldn't jump into another one. What you should be doing is having your me time, because you knew who you were with that person, but now you have to figure out who you are. And you can't figure out who you are if you just jump into another person, and now you complicate yourself with other ups and downs.
And not just that, you need to process the emotional baggage, and by jumping in with somebody else, you're creating an unhealthy pattern.
Exactly. And the whole baggage thing too gets a bad name. I think baggage is a good thing. It just depends where it is. It's not about the size of it. It depends whether you're carrying it around in the open or you processed it and now it's in the inside. If you dealt with somebody in your last relationship who was an alcoholic, you have certain sensitivity to that when you bring that into the new relationship. But if you hide that and every time that person has a drink, you go, oh, it's going to happen again. If you tell them about it, and they can say, oh, okay, no big deal. It's just being aware of how your perceptions have been adjusted or sensitized. It's really not that big of a deal, I think. And being alone, I think, is really a good thing, because you really will find that you have new hobbies and new things that you're interested in that you never would have thought. My writing started basically while I was getting divorced. That's when the writing came out of the sky, and since then I've been pretty much writing any day. I love doing it. And it was something that never really came about before.
No, completely. And finally, what would your best tip be for someone currently going through the dating process?
Wow. Best tip. Wow. So just narrowing it down to
not
one.
Just a tip, the best one.
I know. I have this mountain of wisdom that I have. You need me to know.
I just got one.
I guess I'll steal it from my book. One of the phrases I say is, everybody has to play the status game. Everyone has to play this game, whether they want to or not, because that's just the way it works. And it's not. So the tip is, don't hate the people. Don't hate the game. Hate the people who are playing it, who are lazy and playing it wrong, which is the people who are kind of like come across as the players and the douchebags and people like that. It's just understand that they are caught up in it as well, but they're not understanding it.
Okay.
I guess that way you can keep your sanity and go, it's not me. Because mostly it's really not you. It's really just the way stuff works. So don't put it on your shoulders.
I kind of disagree, but I don't think we've got time for that.
So you're saying it is you.
I think a lot of the time it is you, yeah. I think that a lot of the time you have to deal with certain things first. And until you do, it is you.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. No, not at all. But I needed to come up with some sort of tip so that.
Sorry.
I mean, there's a lot of background to that. I can't, because obviously we can't just say, oh, here's a magic bullet poof.
No, of course not.
Best I can do for you. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's been lovely. And yeah, it's flown by. So thank you.
You're welcome. And if I can have a shout out about how to get to me.
Yeah, of course.
So people can go to thestatusgame.com, and that has the books. I actually have a card game as well, and that'll lead you to the Alchemy for Life, which is also the time and energy resource coaching. So it's alchemy4.life, and so forth.
Thank you so much. And
You're welcome.
I'm sure you can send me that link, and I can put it somewhere that people can find it.
I am happy to do that.
Thank you. So if you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, leave us a review, but more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.